Dola benche sanje to bara sho sanje
Chonan Choki Chonam Yuba do Dagni Capuchi
baje chuje dola benche sanje to bara sho sanje chodan
Chodan Choki Chonam Yuba do Dagni Capuchi Nagi
baje
Chonan
chuje
Tokam Dola
dola
Banjo
benche
Sanke
sanje
Chopar
to tayan tan gate
Gate Para Gate Para Sum
para
Gate
body so han tayan tan
Yata Gate Gate Para Sum Gate Body
body so han tayan tan
Mayata Gate Gate Para Gate Para Sum Gate
body so wala so da simja tamje ga do tobja lana ma je ba sanje ko ma mo je jine ya toba cha di che de be jang ju sim ba lab jan na cui chi do na so lang wa le xin guo le tu guo tu le tu je xiong ma no ji guo du an ga so ba wa de da ga jia zhe ge se chen bu xi wa la ce be jun ju ge zhen ne zhe xie chi bu ni ge sam sam che.
So we must do whatever we possibly can to attain the peerless state of enlightenment. To do this, we know we must perfect all the trainings on the Bodhisattva path. To perfect those trainings, we must have a good understanding of them. We gain that understanding by relying upon a non-mistaken presentation. And we are here attending such a presentation this morning based on the text known as the Bodhisattva's Way of Life by the great Bodhisattva Shantideva. And we will hear some explanation of some of the verses of that text.
어디래 다가는 남주는 시자 주도 탑절라 투지 정보도 또 마셔져 또 봤어요. 아니 또 봐. 다가 저 세지 차니 예산의 그 영향력을 때문에 두세고 루선 나봐. 아니 가서 꿀라 추고 보는 거 도저서 왔다. 무슨 뭐라. 요 삼삼차 아니 덤베게 지워 온 쳐봐 두가 혼래 왜서 봐도 매번 되는 신람자는 25 혼라다 좀 젠장 25대 다가 라마 샤자 생게 나마 젠장의 팀 원래 온고 출라마 지수 내발에 미겨 우제된 거지. 각 무슨 뭐라 요서 어디나 고마샤.
As we normally do, also we visualize in the space in front of us the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, in essence our own guru. The figure of Shakyamuni has one face and two hands, with the right hand in the earth-touching mudra and the left hand at the navel holding an alms bowl filled with nectar. The figure is dressed in the saffron robes of a monk and is marked by the syllables Om at the crown, A at the throat, and Hung at the heart center. From the Hung at the heart center, light rays emanate, going out into the pure realms and inviting all the wisdom beings and empowering deities from those abodes. The wisdom beings dissolve into the central figure, and the empowering deities confer the nectar of empowerment, some of which overflows at the crown, spontaneously producing the figure of Akshobhya. And we really have the certainty that the actual Buddha is really there.
아니 랑게 타고 대 랑게 tinchebe 마게 심제 탐자 다지 마상와 매와 요 삼삼체.
And we visualize in the space all around us are all kind, mother, sentient beings without exception.
어디래 아니 심제가 동에게 나술래 매베 닝제 아니 또바 샤자 투베게 라마 샤자 생기 구수투베 윤된 테시보는 대바 아니 어디래 제도 다간자지 아니 심제자 동에 주다 잡았잖아 지모를 잡아 줬지 잡아 다겠지 대다전도 봐 라마 투베 오브 징글라 부수 공부시 아니 때 심제다 탐자 아니 대화다 대외 주다 잡았잖아 지모를 잡아 주지 대바 쇼치 대바 다겠지 대다전도 봐 라마 샤자 생기 징글라 부수 뭐다 다 소소 지금서 봐 제가 줘도 아니 심제 탐자야 심제 지기야 아니 대화 탐자 동에 탐자 저와 제만도 받았다 세보지 다들 아니 대대 전도에 누가도 술라도 아니 두나 세드베 라마 투베 오브 공부시 토바이나 심제 감도 매봐 발언녀와 지다 와시도 킹게 요바인자 아니 저거 아니 다 간자 저거 아니 심제를 패바 그레스 주바 대다 탐자 아니 가서다 다 간자 저 무슈 유스네 다 저거 탐제 침be 고바로 꿰투바 요구유도 아니 산제 고마 마주나 탐도 투바 지기 센디체도 아니 주주고 쇼디 닝기 삼성원들 고마시.
So So in contemplating on suffering, we developed a sense of compassion, and through reflecting on the qualities of an enlightened beings, body, speech, and mind, we developed that triple faceted faith. And so how wonderful it would be, we think, if all sentient beings could be freed from the suffering. May it be the case. I will see that it is the case. So Guru Dehi, please bless me, and so that this may be so. How wonderful it would be if all sentient beings are placed in happiness and the causes of happiness. May this be the case. I will be the one to do this. So Guru Dehi, please bless me to make this so. So when we make this kind of a reflection, we gain this kind of sense of determination to do something about it personally, that I will be the one to take responsibility for relieving all sentient beings of suffering and their causes on the one hand, and placing them into happiness and their causes on the other. However, I understand I can't even do this for one sentient being at the moment. But if I really analyze to see who has the potential to be able to benefit sentient beings in the best possible way, and the only conclusion is the state of enlightenment. From the point of view of Buddhahood, I can really know what to do. I know the dispositions and personalities, different karmic permutations of all the sentient beings, and I can directly or indirectly help to benefit them. So therefore, I conclude that I must attain that same state of enlightenment to be able to benefit sentient beings in the same perfect way, the same efficient way. And for this reason, I'm listening to some teaching from the Bodhisattva's way of life this morning. Shokrang di geju gaksong, and the gilla della na somba gelwa bangwa ni.
What did it? Takanjeju Tingel teaches what Casadata. Takanjeju Simjig turned to was a Kelani, and it is Semti, and Namle Majabayina, Semti Lutambayina, and near to Togudes, near to Joy Jumse, the Sheche. What did it check? That's Sheche, what is Jumse, what a catcher, Casana Chicasude, Chicaso Chile, Chimba Chingi is Slavne, and Majimba Yina, and Idal Kigiris. Idal Kigiris, on do Takaja, Simja Tanja, Lara, maybe Devala Kugi is the Chuji Jawasa, Chapapang to Shan Chatuta, and Takaja, that the nigger chicken, the Dendola Kawaki to rescue Marbas, Takaja, what the legend, Caso de Sanjay, Sun Kung Tangen, Rotakaja, Kung Tanja, what is saying, but that the legend. The lecture Tasuma Gopam Banesia, Sanjay Takaja Casolata, Tanda and Casa de Seto, Tote Seto, Nalola, and Sharibu Takaja Janju, Sem Tane, and Ranjig Lam Top to Regi, Sungu Yorba, what that the Gawachatic Yorba, Gawachatic Yorba, that the name is that the and Gabonchitan, Gawapam Banesada. Suba Gawapam Banezawale. Megan Janju, same time, Tata Taba Zavani, let you something Mijabe, Tamjaba connections.
So we've been looking at a set of outlines detailing the consequences should one, having taken on the vow of the mind of enlightenment, if one subsequently then just discarded that, then what were the consequences? So initially it talks about that if we have accepted the mind of enlightenment through vow and so on to work for the benefit of all, but then do not engage in the practice of that, ignore that, then it says the result will be rebirth in the lower realms. Should we have in our mind, for example, to give something, even if it's a very small amount, to a sentient being, but do not follow through with that? So we have mentally given in the act of generosity, but we do not follow through with that. Then, according to scripture, we will be born in the hungry spirit realm. And so it's pointing out too that if we have taken on the responsibility to bring, peerless state of the bliss of enlightenment to all sentient beings, but then don't follow through with that. Then saying, how on earth could we imagine getting a good rebirth? How can we gain a good rebirth? There will be no way to do that. And now we're looking at the third of that series of outlines, and that was overcoming objections to this line of reasoning. And so it says here that in one text, it talks about the disciple master Shariputra having accepted the mind of enlightenment and subsequently giving it up, but yet attaining liberation. And so it's saying here in verse number 7, only the omniscient can discern the manner of the action of those who give up the awakening mind but are freed. It is beyond the scope of ordinary thought.
Nyamla ta kanje shari bogu ani kasoda ta kanje geba mabingela ta geba mabingela ani kasoda ta kanje geba mabingela ta kanje janju be sem kellen ta kanje kellen ta kanje geba geba shibju zela ani janju be sem nyamlen chene janju be sem nyamlen chene ta kora kasoda danda de dode kasoda 그래서 세도 전개에서 독주 승의 산지의 송디 나로라 아니 단데 개바 십주스를 장주의 생기 남는 제네 아니 그라 개보 비나시 승의 개보 비나시 승의 개와 셰베 갑라 아니 가서데 아니 저기 가서다 다반제제 가서 다되게 된데게 남는 지게를 내제 지게 아니 된데게 아니 미마이 된데게 아니 잠세지를追呢 아니 짐발롱 짐발롱도 다 계랑 라방을 제로 지슬라는데 아니 샤리보 대급 샤리보 자주스면 냠네 지게데 아니 랑게 라방 예바 제제네 라바 예바 제네 아니 짐바 당도 아니 데데 짐발 랭겐게 다데 다 가솔레다 뇌젠데 아니 계랑을 고샵 제데 되게 민도스 남게 짐바 제도 아니 파 짐바 저 라방 니가 인더스테고 봐 다코라 라바 예바 제도 니가 제요 말봐 아니 라바다 예바가 예바가 파트에온데 안 캐랑가로 구바치기 모두 망구바체다 제기도서 나 지만 말이야 아니 교바케네 땅에 장주스베 냠네 용사 말했어 교바케잖아 아니 장주가 셈동에다 로규직 수고 열봐 이나야 되네 아니 자주베 고마 톱저도 아니 냥소로 맞아 자주베 고마 톱저다 이 개와 연구도 수고 열봐 그래서 샤리베 셈게 땅야 자종 톱바 송소 냠나 다 파바 샤리보소 단다 샤리보소 미강게다 가시 단데 장주가 셈따냐 대다 타와 토바 제바디니 다 레그츠 나라주고 쪼유데 대바레스타 띵나라주게 다 가서다 나라주고 쪼유데 대바 다 나라주고 유도 대바 다데 산제 권에 ken거를 받은 거죠 가야다 들 대시 잡투에 민두스 좀 다인 이나 직전나 샤리보디 상계제 대갑라 다데레고 추이되네 인척으로 와 인척으로 와 땅하라서 나라서 오늘 저 레당보아 지게 장주고 셈께네 셈 땅와이나 냐소도 그 다 줘버다 주베게 조단도 좀 먼저 쳐 시험하시 봐 셈제고 돈 주베 쳐도 주바 나서 봐 된쪽으로 와 내가 진짜나 샤리보 가솔라다 상계제 아니 되는 장주 셈베게 추이되네 제 아니 제바제네야 마 두자 가시를 펜배쳐도야 녀랑게 줘봐야 된 초고래 또 다들 레저 상님만 셰촌 투에 말다 어다디서 다들 수 타제도 다 산제 친구들 모든 거라 주고 줘도 돼 버려서 문에 줘다잖아 자주고 셈 동아이나 다 녀소도 계죠 다 줘버렸어 이내 다 파바 샤리 보다 보다 당 알아서 줘도 돼 버리셨어 세르다
And so this goes as follows then. The objection is that it's not right to say that if one gives up on the mind of enlightenment, that one is reborn in the lower realms. Look at the case of Shariputra. He gave up the mind of enlightenment, but he ultimately attained the state of an arhat. So the Arya Shariputra, even though gave up the mind of enlightenment, he was able to attain liberation. And so here, this goes back eons previously to previous life of Shariputra, when under a particular king he was practicing. He generated the mind of enlightenment and was practicing accordingly on the Bodhisattva path. And at one point, he was approached by somebody who kind of a very malicious intent to beg from Shariputra. And he said, I need your right hand. And so Shariputra said, okay. And then he cut off his right hand and proceeded to offer him the hand, at which point this malicious beggar became extremely offended. He said, how dare you be so disrespectful to give me something with your left hand? This is unacceptable, and so on. And so that you can see that without a right hand, Shariputra had only the left hand with which to offer the hand. And so he, at that point, he became disillusioned and said, look, I can't do anything for such a mind as this. I'm giving up the mind of enlightenment. And so that was the instance of it. So now we're coming to a much later time, when he's actually reborn, is able to meet with, and not only meet with, but to attend the Buddha, travel with the Buddha, and so on. And so it's kind of saying in general, yes, that in general, if one gives up on the mind of enlightenment, the result for an ordinary being is certainly rebirth in the lower realms. But here it's saying that the karma of situations, the full kind of import and repercussions of the karma of situations is beyond the ordinary mind. It is only open to the purview of a fully enlightened, omniscient being like a Buddha. And so saying in this particular case, you can see that even though having given up the mind of enlightenment, Shariputra subsequently had the ability to spend so much time so close to the historical Buddha, that would have certainly been kind of a plus on his side, certainly would have expiated the karma of having given up on the mind of enlightenment. So it's saying that there are exceptions, but in general, the rule is that if we give up on the mind of enlightenment, then definitely a lower realm rebirth is on the cards.
What is it? Yeah, man, that talk about the legend, Chichana, Semgela, Dundam Semgeta, Kunzop Semge, Niva Yinso, Kunzop Semge, the Loba Yinayang, Dundam Semgeta, Rashinga Maduba Lotti. Rashinga Madube, and Chotamja Rashinga Madube, Neva Lotti, and it's called Manyamba and Yoba Yindu, and that Sanjay Gomatu to some Marete, Yinayang, because of the quality, another town in the Jigmare. Then is that Tabata never to Tobachigu, some such a young Ruata Kacha the leg on Yang, Yason Maget, Jene was Tada de Niranta Chobakumatu, in Sigurwa. Takanja Kunzo the same get Yamba Yinaya, that's some don't do some Haris. Yinaya Rashinga Madube, Chetamja Rashinga Madube Logic. Shirap Chabo Yimayin, Shirap Yimayin, Chetanja Rashinga Madube Loti, Yovato, Takanja Kasura, Takanja, only to be Shirap the Manyamba Yovayin, and that quality another Digimodo, that Sanjay Gomatomatona, Tabatan Yabado Tobachi in Sansayan, Di Matame Ongi, Tabatoba Tele in Choburwa. That is Tobari.
And of course, there are other possibilities as well. I mean, that one can have, for example, a very unblemished practice of ultimate bodhicitta, whereas our conventional bodhicitta may degenerate. So this is related to attitude to reality and the kind of the understanding that all phenomena lack any objective existence. And so one may say, okay, that's valid. I'll accept that. But this notion of working for the benefit of all sentient beings by attaining enlightenment, that's a bit beyond me. I just can't see that as being, how do you say, workable. And so therefore I give that part up. But I'm still holding to the idea that ultimately the ultimate bodhicitta of regarding all phenomena as lacking any objective existence is a valid point of view and a valid practice to cultivate. Therefore, one can see how one could continue with that. And on that basis, by dealing with the root of cyclic existence, actually attain the state of a hero or solitary realizer arhathood. And so it's kind of saying here, one maintains the wisdom aspect of the mind of enlightenment, but one discards the method side of it.
That is because Jaju Sem Nyamba Yina Yang, Jaju Sem Nyamba Yina Yang, and Kanja Tony Tobe Shera Manyaba Yina, Tony Tobe Shera Manyaba Yina, and Dita Koga Bashi Tungurwa, Koga Nimbo Meva Tungurwa, and Dylan Yaba Joneta, Tsudim Sung, Tengazecom, Shera Gomne, Lam Labasum Yamsalana, Takaja Yamsaland, and Yansola Mando, Dipa Chang Tugure. Dilatene, and the Caso de Tabia Combat talked about it, Young Chosarwa. In a Michel.
Again, I'm saying yes, that in terms of the conventional mind of enlightenment may degenerate, but the wisdom regarding wisdom realizing emptiness may not. And so therefore you're still focusing on uprooting the very root of cyclic existence, and you're backing it up with good ethical practice and so on, good meditative concentration and the correct view. In other words, the three higher trainings. And then definitely you have dealt with the root of cyclic existence. You're on the path leading to liberation. So there's no reason to expect that you wouldn't attain that state of liberation.
So
that's only a thought that occurred to me. Maybe it's not valid. I don't know.
What the Janju Seba Pena Solam la and Chasum Chene, Solam Chungo Ding Chambus, Tanganja, Solam Ding Lesosuna, Pejanyangu Yomari, Solam Ding Lesasuna, and this same get Sertabu Sem Gesgo, Sertabu Sem Gesota, Stella, and so you are doing maybe a table in Bekijare. Then the Yaza, Sem get the Sertabu Sem Ges, the Peja, Yame Maba Kijare. That Solam Chungula, Tanyaba Yumudu.
And so, in terms of different levels of the kind of stability and of your mind of enlightenment, discussed the 5 paths, saying the path of accumulation has 3 different sections to it, the smaller, the medium, and the greater sections. And it is said that if you have reached the middling section there, you have a particular kind of mind of enlightenment that is more stable. It's likely to not degenerate. Whereas if you're still on the smaller section of the path of accumulation, that level of that experience of your mind of enlightenment is still fragile, and you may lose it.
Mozo le tangbo ageta sem kene ta mangbu nyamba yungul wada kanja nyamba yoti logata kaso cholam chedo janju ke sem chuma mai ba ke sar ba chuma mai ba ke sar ta kanja mozo le tangbo ta chuma mai mama re janju ke sem ta kanja janju sem ke yende tone ane sem ke choji gyawasa de chebe dune janju ke sem kene wada de nyamne ya kaso de ta wada de cheba ngozo le tangbo la ta peche janju ge sem kellen une kellen chen ane maswa yimba ina ta kanje je gasole kanje je nyasole gede nyanga tende yebare ta yebare ta tanda janju ge sem kese de tanda janju ge sem kese de tanda de jidang 그 초갈라 때는 쌤 깨다 되게 깨져 좀 많이 봐 자주 쌤 깨져 지금 초람을 쇼사 남게 쌤 바지 중앙에는 다 주마 많이 받게 버와 주마 많이 받게 버와 다 가라도 주마 많이 봐 말이야 주마 추제겠다 금제 먹고 삼로 땅전에 아니 초지 겨와서다 집에 되네 아니 자주가 쌤 켈랑전 켈랑다 송아이네 평요 봐도 매번 요때다 마송아이나 다 내가 저거도 유여버 다 되게 된 거죠 되게 돼 시험에 토네 아니 켈랑산에 아니 간토도 그 송아이를 배준지에
So we're talking about here, I think, vastly varied the potentials on the path. And when we talk about the path of accumulation, we're talking about really already there. Kind of like just consider yourself as on that path. You have a much more unartificial cultivation of the mind of enlightenment. Whereas at the moment, we are as at beginners, where we may be striving to generate the mind of enlightenment, but it very quickly degenerates as well. And we lose our sense of that benefit for all sentient beings and so on. And so it's kind of like, we have to kind of keep trying all the time, and that keep trying to avoid any degeneration, as is pointed out in these verses, that we may go through the formal process of through generating mind of enlightenment through ritual and so on, and then so we've got to understand like the great benefits of maintaining a pure sense of the mind of enlightenment, whereas the faults associated with giving it up are varied and many as well. And so it's kind of like that sense of really trying to reach the stage where you have really integrated the path, as they say. As for example, somebody on the path of accumulation, that they have really entered the path, and that means you are much more sincere and much more unartificial in your adherence to concepts like the mind of enlightenment.
아니 거라 지금 냠내 지에 가리가리 임바다 수수 마신 바이나 아니 냐발레라보도는 용티들와 미시바 오게 동아지고 냐바주고 야 소수 켈렘베게 아니 동바다 담세 가리나 데라 마구바이나 야 냐바 용구요래 아니 디베 개침못지네 그베게 돈에다가 이제 저거 순적지야 에 다다 밤에 봐야 밤에게 온게 야 녀거들 바다 때 맞을 거야 야 녀모 숙셔보 요나 녀모 디 옴리야 가소르다 지금 랑게 켈렘베 담세도 동바도라 내견 저대 중국에도 다가자 미시바 녀바줘야고 마구바 녀바줘야고 밤에바 녀바줘야고 아니 녀모 마we 녀바줘야고 선다 동아줘야 고시소로 숨고도와 어떤데
So, of course, this is all within the context of the name of this chapter, which is, of course, the chapter on conscientiousness. And it's really showing how absolutely crucial that mental factor is, that conscientiousness is something that really prevents us from, taking a kind of like a casual attitude towards what we have already accepted and so on, and prevents this sense of degeneration entering into our practice. And it says in general that there are four main doorways through which degeneration and mental affliction and fault occur. And the first of these is simply not knowing, what it is we should and shouldn't be doing. And that ignorance is a doorway into doing the wrong thing. The second is lack of respect. A lack of respect, even though you know what to do, what to avoid, but you have a lack of respect for the information itself. That then you are careless, of course, and you allow faults to get in that door. And the third is, interestingly, conscientiousness, the lack of conscientiousness, in fact. It's that lack of conscientiousness. It doesn't bring enough attention to bear on what it is we should be doing from moment to moment and what we should be avoiding in terms of our thinking. And that allowed fault and mistake, kind of like negativity, degeneration, and so on to occur. And the fourth door through which faults can occur is when the mental afflictions are very powerful. And so there we simply, our defenses cannot block the mental afflictions getting in, and they overwhelm us. And so these are things that we need to pay attention to, close attention to, if we are serious about avoiding degeneration.
제베 동아 지와의 제베 다 셰드 냠바다 자주가 셈 자주 선바 현재에서 개발라 아니 바체 제나야 대도 수바다 자주 선바 현재에 개발 제바텔라 아니 수수 계획 제바이나 다 대다 수바야 네가 요테 최신의 조워스 어때 같이죠 아니 대다가 좀 제노서 좀 숨자 다 어디를 숨자 sabja 숨자
And so therefore, just to wrap up the last verse in terms of talking about this exception in the form of Shariputra, who though gave up on his mind of enlightenment, yet attained the state of enlightenment, and we are directed to understand that the in general the rule holds that if we forsake the mind of enlightenment, the commensurate result will be rebirth in the lower realms. But the karma, individual karma of situations is beyond the scope of an ordinary mind, an ordinary being's mind. It's only known by one who is omniscient. Then the second point to be made with regard to these, this set of a new set of outlines, is that that by giving up on the mind of enlightenment, the welfare of others is degenerated. And there's three subheadings under this point. It says that if the mind of enlightenment degenerates, it being such a heavy downfall, that it degenerates all sentient beings. And secondly, that if one interferes or creates an obstacle for the virtue of a bodhisattva, then that has a commensurate result of rebirth in the lower realms. And thirdly, the reasoning behind that.
다 당고대 자주게 셈 냠바이나 동아 지와의 제베 아니 셰드 냠바네 자왈레 데네 자주 셈발라 두에나네 지와데 대다 데네 준조나 셈정군제 돌라메.
So the first of these, that if we give up on the mind of enlightenment, it being such a heavy downfall that it has a negative effect on all sentient beings. Verse number 8. This, for a bodhisattva, is the heaviest of downfalls. For should it ever happen, the welfare of all will be weakened.
다 가자 셈 或者对的，semje nyamba tene ta semje nyamba ne janjo seba zawe dongye na ne shindo chiwa de te ta dongwa tene chungwa juna ane semje kunje tene memba te shenje tene nyamba yin she ba wocha.
So it says here that if the mind of enlightenment degenerates through the root downfall occurring, that is such a heavy instance that it says that it will weaken the welfare of all sentient beings.
或者他感觉这个说的这个你让他准备恐怕找我的他们甚至蒙古了偏托我的但讲究什么出给按偏托吧那些就偏托图嘛是吧但偏托图没对我说他感觉他感觉甚至呢安这个他感觉在越东的中华一般呢他甚至略到一呢甚至个对没把的他相对两把一些吧我讲我就是他感觉这个说的这个家就三把数个sem je了偏托吧那些这个你让家就没工作头呢偏托都没办法上他个这个 sem 的略大对他个这个说的他个这个就的这个念了明白就偏托都没在提出有事的我在这想
So here it's really referring to the loss of the tremendous benefit that one can bring through the practice of according to the Bodhisattva's way, the Bodhisattva motivation or the mind of enlightenment motivation. Say compared, for example, to a healer, solitary realizer, arhat. Yes, they have a capacity to benefit, but when compared with the Bodhisattva working with the mind of enlightenment, it's incomparable. That here, because of the loss of that great benefit, therefore, the result will have to be severe as well.
但你把讲究三把先给教完了，把这将来也得到从把年中出，你是早晚的，刚些给这怎么样的，所能把这给这吧，甚至到了面就被第一年就没得面。
The second point to be made here is that should one interrupt or create obstacle to the virtue of a bodhisattva, that the corresponding result would have to be rebirth in the lower realms. Verse number 9 covers this and says, and should others for even a single moment hinder or obstruct his wholesome deeds by weakening the welfare of all, there will be no end to their rebirth in lower states.
刚他属于没那是过了，他的这个讲究身边的娘来了，把这家外呢，刚先给这怎么样讲究什么的也是所能的，给完了把这给完了是把这的给这把的，那讲究什么的，身边给做完了，你把面把他，你把那个这个，你把面把这边，这把一边，第一年就给完那边长木他们是他们不买这个，他可是给完那边长短。 So
it's here saying, and that if another, even through saying one word, were to create an obstacle to the virtuous merit of a bodhisattva, that and therefore interrupt their being able to benefit others, then that will result in endless rebirths in the lower realms.
他的可是的，苏巴的中间呢，他因为中间搞的是早晚的，甚至这个台湾样，新的大年娘就呢，能够马路他那边，可是路线的是没去关系。
And so the third of these outlines detailing the reasoning for saying that, verse number 10. For if my being is impaired by destroying the joy of even one creature, then what need is there to mention destroying the joys of creatures' vastest space?
他刚才身边这个彻底掉下来呀，他这个 탐제 참바다 된대게 디기 깨자마래 세디 디기 중조지라야 대 시그네다 교제바이나 다니 조알레 냠바존다 소소 덴루키엘레 냠네 년줄레 기그유나 년줄레 사 냠바주나 덴줄레 냠바주나 다 덴루 개와 토마토 바제 년줄레 개와 용구유나 요바이나 안에 남과 말리베 탈레베 심제 탐제제네 대와 탐제도 뭐 동네 탐제도 제와 제 딜름도 개바이나 지고있나 아니야서도 개와 매주고 스타디 시험하고 와도 왔어 다 장게 차네 자체 좀 차네 아니 가서 디기 개체 좀 차네 다 가봤지 바이더라도 어때들
So it's simply making the comparison here that if the even the happiness of this life, not even the omniscient state happiness we're referring to, just normal happiness of this life of one being or to be destroyed, then that compromises my own well-being, my own sense of happiness. Now, if we were to compare that to really destroying the supreme happiness of all sentient beings, as vast as space, beyond even space, then definitely, why wouldn't one be reborn in the lower realms?
다 숨바 사토발라서 탁승와 좋아네 다 간제 저게 된데게 저 가서도 켈레네 아니 된데게 가서다 저 자동 주네 다 간제 저 제네 다 간제 장주가 셈냐바이나 양조 장주 셈지 개바이나 양 아니 저게 저 가서다 저게 가서다 상고마 고마 파일 뇌지 그래서 대다 동화 또된다 장주 셈도 된바다 코와 가서 코와 레지 제제나 사도 발라 유린 토스 레다 람 고마 kel 유르부 토그레스
The next outline, the third, talks about that on giving up, allowing one's mind of enlightenment to degenerate, then it says one becomes more distant from higher states. So one is kind of like, as it were, I would say compromise from being able to gain these higher states. And so verse number 11 says, thus those who have the force of an awakening mind as well as the force of falling from it stay revolving within cyclic existence and for a long time are hindered from reaching the Bodhisattva levels.
다 대다 셈게 땅에서 셈게 아니 셈게 가서도 다 도마마소 접아 아니야 그 가서도 다 자동 포나 셈게 땅에 려다는 다 셈제가 전세 죽도서 말했다 죽으면서 봐 제대지 가진 전에 대다 셈게 땅에 아또 동화 돕된다 라야 자주가 셈 돕다 된바 달래 다 레뉴죠 코아 코네다 간제 양조 자주가 셈을 켈렌치다 양디 고베 온게마 야 지가서 양자조 대등으로 코알레 년소도 토리니소다 정적 토리를 도자게 양년소를 토리게 레메게 제와 제네 아니 디아 네바디 장주가 셈다웨 네바디 온게 아니 제라 장주가 셈지고 디제면에 야 고베 온게마 양조 가소라다 레라부체네 그다데 지 가소라 지금 소마도 맞춰야 그게 라가서 사토발라다 사당보 잡도 가와라서 토발라 애니 유르부 토도르스 유르부슈 코도르스 토발라 가서 유르도 토바 이시에 송서다 데레 토바 용거데스 송샤스 워터체.
So this verse claims that if one forsakes the mind of enlightenment and it being such a very powerful downfall, but then again and retakes the mind of enlightenment, and that in itself is something very powerful as well. Nevertheless, that they will keep revolving within cyclic existence under the power of karma and the mental afflictions, from lower realm to higher rebirth to lower realm to higher rebirth, and just alternatively one after the other like that. And so they must endure these kinds of rebirths, and they will become more distant from the higher state beyond that, such as the first Bodhisattva ground, the joyful ground.
다 간제 저 먼저 그 가서래 저거 동바도 켈레네 다 자주 선배 랍자도 켈레네 다다지 마소나 디 예바 되게 되는 거라서 지금 견제 되게 되네 지금 가서래 추조사 양보 매되는 거 사자소로 차네 아니 대저 아니 다바차 엔 다바나라 되는 마타레 메고 차기로 그 추조사 양보 매겐 지금 사자지가라 아니 사공고소로 심바이나 아니 줄래 아니 말아서 파사자 가서 다바차네 마르시르 다바차네 엔티날 마디네 탈마도 소로치 탈마도 소로 중국으로 왔다 당분에 그 또 수도 정도는 바장마 속에 제바이나 아니 그 지금 다바데 참마도 연구로 왔다 다바데 참마도 거기는 야랑랑 되고 전화 되고 중국으로 와 연구로 왔다 지나 시체는 간제 지금 간제 지금 어떻게 됐는데 다 간제 지금 켈레 양마소 간자서는 듣고 지금 가서래 사자를 마소래 지금 가서 마트 시우차도 다바 시우차도 소치 안데는 야랑 두 마두고 소 차고도 와다 저 소치 당분에 지금 가서래 지금 바유 땐전에 다 간제 지금 교장 마중에 지금 시우 개정면서 되네 지도 아니 그 당부 고추되다 도스 강내 용거다 림베 그 레라다 치네
And so really this business of taking on vows is what's being referred to here, isn't it? And you know what we need to establish really when or before we take on any kind of vow is the importance of not breaking that vow, of not allowing that vow to degenerate. Because if we do, then even though there's an opportunity to take it again and again and again, what's happening is that as compared to, say, a water course that is flowing unobstructed, but if we leave it and don't keep it pure, keep it clear of obstruction, it's going to get clogged up with mosses and various other growths that will impede the flow, and ultimately it will be clogged up completely and stopped. So this is referring to the mind state as well. If we take a set of vows and then aren't conscientious about keeping them pure, and this is what it means. It means we need to work on just keeping our vows, keeping them pure. If we allow them to degenerate, then don't worry about it, but say, that's okay, I can take them again and again and again. It's like that water course getting clogged up with moss as well. They become less effective the more often we take them. And so we need to understand, sure, when you take vows freshly, having never had them before, it is difficult. It is a harder proposition. But if we put in the hard yards at the beginning, there's no doubt that things will become easier as we get more and more accustomed to living within the vows.
나는 돈바 현다 미라와 자주 선배 돈바 선배 현다 미라와 저거다 돈바디 심제 다 페어스 다저 산제 줄라 저기 페어스 치고지 첨부 임바 지라 얘냐 맞아봐 얘나 아니 저거 가서라다 가자 심제 탐제 초주 자와 세다 잡았다 심제 탐제라 아니 다저 고고다 와서지 류바 소리 차디고 있도 아니 네바 빠도 메바 용되게 도와 네바 빠도 메바 요 페어 빠도 메바 요 되게 what that 되게 And
so it's important to consider, of course, the benefits on the one hand versus the the faults on the other. And especially in the context of the Mind of Enlightenment vow, which is quite unique in the sense that, you know, it speaks of this potential to be so beneficial to all sentient beings. It really is the quintessential kind of vow in a way of being able to benefit all sentient beings. But by the same token, if we fail to live up to the ideals of the vow, then we are deceiving all those sentient beings, and that brings with it subsequently a great fault as well. And so to weigh up the benefits versus the fault is very, very important for us, and therefore to take the vow with eyes wide open, and so that one can really concentrate on gaining the benefits of it.
다 숨바 라발라 바유 차발라 숨세드레 다 바유 차발라 숨다 녀바 가서 녀바 빵발라 바유 차와 겨와 공발라 바유 차와 녀모 빵발라 바유 차와 점 숨제.
The next set of outlines talks about the practice of conscientiousness. This has three: practicing conscientiousness to abandon fault; 2, practicing conscientiousness to familiarize to virtue; and 3, practicing conscientiousness to overcome mental affliction.
가서다 녀바 빵월라 바유 차와 녀바 빵월라 바유 차와다 nga chene ta kacha 녀바 de ta kacha diba pang diba 마방와 있나 니바 마방이나 년주 쪽에 가서 년주로서 교육거 봐. 다 디바 마방와 있나 아니 년송을 계속 그랬어. 년송을 계속 년주 교육거 봐. 아니 산제 세제 다녀서 제바 다 간제 산제 세다 제바게 아니 저기 자치당 권하족에 랑그 되 마주바다 말했대. 다 간제 저 소속에 가서도 다 간제 저 바유 맞아버나 가서 다 간제 가서도 녀바 빵월라 바유 맞아봐이나 아니 권하족 모두 려당와서 권하족 모두 려고 여마다 이나 랑게 뭐네 아니 거서 퉁게도 좀 맞아봐 인상 아니 려당와서다 다녀서 샤워다 간제 저 가서다 저 가서다 저기 다 간제 저기 가서다 그 가서도 다 배마도 뇌 맞아 다녀 샤스게 저다 다대거든 지나 권하족 가서 다녀 샤바 말다 랑게 뭐네다 권하족 다녀서 랑게 뭐네 권하족 다녀서 샤바라 와 이제 샤바다 샤주바라 좋아 저 진짜 아니 된저 다 제바 아니 다녀서 샤바 다녀서 제바 아니 가서도 된저 다 된저 니가와 아니 좋아다 어디서다 된저 니가와 년조 있잖아 아니 겨와 두배 깜매와 딱까지 딱문에 국가 약속 다다들이 다 된데 이도 된저를 류된다 다 된저를 류된다 다 소소 된데 제바이나 된저를 류된다 니가 붙여줘 좋아 니마도 붙여줘 아니 대만이 만나 다 년조를 매도 줘서요 말 년조 제바이나 아니 겨와 두배 깜매 되겠지 다 된데 이마인자 된저 다 된데 임바인자 아니 된저 니가 왜 좀세 놓아서 왔다 어디도 삼도 땅전에 다 간자 바데 때 받지 거에 돌아 어디서 좀세 초망무원에 삼도 땅에 초망무한테 아니 가서 니발아 바위 잡고 있지 좀세 초망무지나 삼도 땅에 아니 니발아 바위 채도 받지
So the case of conscientiousness and working with conscientiousness. So it talks about the first of the 3 points made there was practicing conscientiousness in overcoming or abandoning fault. And this has 5 subheadings to be dealt with. And the first is that negativity and downfall, if not abandoned, will result in lower realm rebirth. The second is that the Buddhas and the children of the Buddhas remain equanimous. This is in the context of for example, somebody who lacks conscientiousness with regard to their practice will appear not to have the benefit of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. But in fact, it's not an issue for the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas at all. They're always ready to benefit. But it's simply that because of our own lack of conscientiousness, therefore our own inconducive practice, we have not generated the conducive conditions to avail of the help of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so the third of these subheadings then talks about the difficulty of attaining that rebirth with the freedoms and endowments. And the fourth is that if we are born in the lower realms, then we have no chance to establish virtue. And finally, the fifth will be the reasoning behind why we say it's difficult to attain a rebirth with the freedoms and endowments.
Nyomo pangye la bayu tengo ya koda bayu koran bayu se de chik chik de dia ko nyamne chide ani ko chig kaso de ta sho yong ne samlo tang go de ko bayu ten da de ba de sum zo chung go do ta ngala zo tang ngazo le tang bo yi za tang bo nyomo mo ni ga sa nyeba mo bo yong go ba ta de nyeba de yong go ba da rang go chona rang nyeba yong go ba ha mo go na nyeba le la bo to ngo rang nyeba yong go ba de ngo ba che ke to bo ba ngo ba che da de ne yi ba za nyeba yong go yo sa nyeba de bang go yo de bang wala kar che ko sun ba yu ten ku do so ani de ba yu ten go de kres ten go go res na ta tum chen ngai ko na sam ta ten go res kare na 가서데 가서 다지 가서 딕바다 저 마바바 이나 년줄라 줘버다 년줄 주고 바데 아니 지 리트메 저거 용다데 삼로다 다가네 생가란 쪽에 아니 문에 카미 야다 다서 산제다 자주 써봐 속에 아니 가라 졸라 아니 지 가서 코나도 가라 쪽 졸라 페바 두베다 아니 페바 두마다 자 따님서 샤에 차기도 왔어 맞아 봐도 된 받지 고도 뒤잡아이나 코나도 편바 주에 공반 능시 편바 줍투가 좀 그래서 가라 졸라 다가네 생게 지 가서래 녀모라 바요 마대 바이나 아니 대적을 토고 말다 대적이 니 가버래 대적이 녀모라 갑대 짜는 연구 그래마도 녀모 코랑 그 라와 샤바이나 녀모서다 예바 그 라와잖아 예바 되게 녀송을 깨워지 그래서 진짜 대적이 니 가버들 그 말이었어 대전이 두고 말했어. 네 말이나 가봐도 년줄 깨 두고 다스. 년줄 좀 개와 두에 갑요 말했다. 어. 아니 되네 이마 인자 어떤 저 말에 아니 대전이 가와랬다. 년줄네 아니 대전이 두고 전다 좀 마도 வர봤다. 나도 단다 루텐 딜레바네 산제고 공바 두베 당 년소네 나도 루텐 데레실레 잡아나 년소네 나도 루텐 데레실레 깔레 카가르. 패저 두베 매대 왔다. 주변에 매대 버려. 먼저 단에 되네 산제 공부 줍스다 다 다른 뭐 쇼지 나와 저기도 와. 남이가 년송을 깨차네. 단은 가라도 예배 류대들 예지 투그선 투배하나 요 맞다. 투배하나 매팅 지와. 다 되게 그가 상도 단전에 다 가자 되게 처음 뭐 상도 오호 예발라 바다 때문에 지구도 지단데 된데서 지구도 삼사지다 예고도 와.
So here it's really laying out the case really for how not just important but essential the practice of conscientiousness is. That's saying here, if conscientiousness in order not to incur fault, conscientiousness in order to concentrate solely on accumulating virtue, and conscientiousness in particular to avoid mental affliction. And it's kind of saying here, we have all this as to see this as a very vast practice, that just one word, but and yet encompasses so much of what is crucial as to our practice, to making our practice really quality, pure practice. And so, we have to understand that, especially now as beginners, where we incur many faults, we're sort of almost defenseless against mental affliction, is to really, first of all, start the process of recognizing where we're falling down, recognizing where we're not living up to our practice and our vows. In other words, to see our fault, and then to reach the point of using then the abandoning those faults through the reasoning afforded with conscientiousness, right? So it's kind of saying, understanding, like it's saying here, that here we use the conscientiousness in order to avoid negativities and downfalls, because if we don't abandon them, then we're going to absolutely end up in the lower realms. There's no doubt about that. That's very, very clear. And so it's kind of like, from our point of view, to kind of like and the saying too, the saying, look, we are under the care of the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas who want to be of benefit to us, but we have to create that connection, through our own kind of conscientiousness, through our own sincerity, and so on, to create those conducive conditions for that connection to be effective. And that without equanimity, without conscientiousness, we're unable to create that kind of conducive atmosphere to reap the benefits of the good intentions of Buddhas and Bodhisattvas. And so it's kind of like, and conscientiousness is also the guard against mental affliction overcoming us. And we know what the results of mental affliction are. They are definitely a rebirth in the lower realms itself. And it's kind of pointing out too, and you don't want to let it get that far. Conscientiousness is the key that keeps that doorway to the lower realms or closed and locked. And we must make sure that that is the case, because we know that attaining a precious human rebirth like we have is the basis on which we can actually attain the state of enlightenment. This body is really important on the basis of which we can attain that state of enlightenment. But we have to get there first, because if we end up in the lower realms, saying it's very difficult to again attain that state of the freedoms and endowments. It also, in the lower realms, we just don't have that state of mind which is able to take opportunity to accumulate virtue. And so all of this is the work of, is within the realm of the practice of conscientiousness, to avoid these kinds of rebirths, to guarantee that we have the conducive conditions to refine our practice and so on. And so that's and though to understand that if we, through a lack of conscientiousness, allowed mental afflictions to hold sway, we would end up in a state where we have virtually no chance. It's almost impossible to get back to where we are now, where we have the potential to attain the omniscient state of enlightenment.
다 가제 저 뭐저 출로가 내수 먹고 시에 개침벌때 딜레 개쳐서 랑기 내수 시에 개침벌 랑 레당보아 임바 뇨모 도송베 랑 sembe 시랑도 줘봐 셈 뇨모베 시랑도 줘봐 되게 그 내수 약보 좀 마신 바 이나 아니 랑니 뭐 소소 뭐 마시 바 찍바래 소소 뭐 마시 바 이나 아니 소소 대화 되고 또 동에 되고 뭐도 세대 아니 대화 줍도 와지다 동에 세도 용두고 요 말이 당보 소소 야보 뭐시 바잖아 소소 뭐시 바쳐서 내 명디가 누가 디디서 말디라고 하라고 개치슈데 소소게 아니 저기 가서데 너무 두송게 아니 내당데 근데 유미 아니 되게 아니 근데 가서도 연구 유미 되게 내당 약고 싶어이나 아니 그 바위대 내라도 쪽으로 아니 못 쳐봐 Timena, so machine by Yina. And so there were took to it that to mess set or young for a merta. Ye Ming tea in a lumber tea, this Rakba, I get you the social at the Catoleta, because a letter boy in the letter boy in a Kyokari, you may, and the subsum much on a Karikari, young Sibade, Karikari, young good. That didn't go how go and so Yapo to washing the one. So Yapo to wash by Yina, and David YouTube to a to make you set to a Jungurwa.
So we have to be able to focus on really what's important. Know that external issues should always be less of a concern compared to our internal issues, what's going on within. We must really learn to get to know the inner workings of our mind as a priority, and pay less attention to what this my name, my reputation, my country, and so on. These things are not important. We must really get to really know the inner state of our own mind, and that means we are accepting our status as kind of amateur beginners in this regard. We're just looking inwards, and we have to come from a very humble kind of point of view. Say, really, I'm a total rank beginner here. I'm just having a look in here to see how my mind works, how things kind of all stitched together, and to really then, you're already coming in with a beneficial attitude, whereby you recognize the positivity of virtue on the one hand and the negativity of non-virtue. So there's happiness is more definitively the goal, and suffering is to be eradicated. And it is in that kind of atmosphere and that context too that one will see the true benefit of conscientiousness. When we bring that to the table, when we're looking inwards, we have a much more honest approach to the pluses and minuses within our own thinking. And so this is very, very important that we take this honest approach. We look in, we get to know, recognize how our mind tends, what are the tendencies within our mind, kind of favor virtue, because we know that leads to happiness, and we eradicate non-virtue because we know that leads to suffering. And bringing conscientiousness to bear to that, will bring a sense of kind of a much more professional approach to this process.
다 당고 대 나게 단데 당고다 틱도 마바바네 녀주 주고 스타 레 틱도 마바바 이나 아니 녀주 주바나 제다 가서 대다 제다 담체시 다지 구버 다기 구버 주버차 땡네 저버 마제나 원에 와도 좋아 주스.
And so these 5 subheadings begin with the fact that if negativity and downfall are not abandoned, then definitely one has to experience the lower realms. The verse number 12. Therefore, just as I have promised, shall I respectfully accord my actions. If from now on I make no effort, I shall descend from lower to lower states.
다 대다외는 근데 임바인자 지다 담체와 시 근저스 켈는 받는 신기 어느 장생이 라바 다지 구베 주바자스다 구베 주바데 라바치기 있어 라바차이 다지 라바차이 정도 람베제 되네 아니 라발을 좀 맞아봐이나 아니 다 가져지 가서다 와래 와도 때 명송 냥송도 좋아 주로 다 간제 지다 도바 켈레데 아니 고네 고도 좋아 체도데 다 지조조 살아 원에 고도 좋아 체그레스 좋아 주로 셔봐 워쳐
So here, when it says here, therefore, just as I have promised, shall I respectfully accord my actions, it's referring to the fact of, now that I've taken on this vow, right? I've taken on the training related to the mind of enlightenment, and I do this with every respect and engage in that wholeheartedly. However, we're saying, if I don't put in the effort, all right, and from now on I don't put in the effort, then all I have to expect is to go from lower to lower states, meaning from lower realm to lower realm to lower realm. And so this is kind of like echoing the fact that, by taking on such a vow and by being able to practice it perfectly, one could expect to go to higher realms. And so it's saying here, if you do the converse to that, then of course one can only expect to go from lower to lower realms.
다 간제 아니 지다 소소가 다 저 가서로 다 간제 소소가 다 간제 켈란 제베절라 아니 제대가 도반냠네 제투사게 아니 튠베게 아니 유란네 다간네 아니 데데게 아니 기부 담발레데 아니 데데게 아니 냠네 툭투에 야네 양도 몰람 따비에 아니 디치도 손놈 사예 와다 저 개치모 용바와 와다 간제 데데 제네 아니 코치 초망분에 다걸 툭투바치 얘기 어떻게 제 어느 다간지 기부 담바속에 아니 남다한테 줄을 때네 아니 남네 그래서 제샤 아니 몰람 따비에 와다 지내시 용화 쇼스를 아니 가서도 가서 몰람 따비에 라서 와다 가이네 요걸 와다 소소가 배줘야지 아니 기부 담바가 남다다 기부 담바수도 감이 야다지에다 와다 대용 걸 타고 와다 아니 몰람 따야 소람 사야
And so in the course of taking on vows, and so accepting to engage in the practices, for example, of the Bodhisattva vow, then of course, we are accepting to focus on the object of virtue as much as we possibly can, and we kind of try to garner as much support for our practice as we possibly can, so that we can maintain this quality of pure focus. So that means like we get to know the lives of the holy beings of the past. We make aspirational prayers. We engage in as much meritorious activity as we can. In other words, approaching it not just from a single point of view, but from many different angles, so that we are bolstering the mind of enlightenment that we have accepted and the practices that go along with that. And so that means that then we are, making supplications to the Buddhas, Bodhisattvas, and so on for help, for their benefit, and really not leaving any stone unturned to keep the purity of our vow.
아니 산제 세계에서 다녀서 제봤다 산제 세다 제베게 심제 수이나 르당와 저 자완이는 용거 말때 이내야다 랑게 아니 녀발라 바요 마제데 아니 다 코나 저거 다 내가 버리 몰람 자사삼 다 디야고 차바쇼 심 좋아 태워쇼 야고 차서 몰람 자사삼 뭐서 펜도서 배워 차기로 와 용거로 와 어때들 근데 저 심제 탄제 편제베 산제 장면 대주자 다니 랑게 네베데 소예 주유 마주도 당돈 대신 다제나 양나 양도와 대신대 년주 내다 친다데 제다 식소 노어 줄수.
The second of these points then talks about the equanimity of the Buddhas and the children of the Buddhas. So it's here this refers to the fact of, when we are taking on a vow, such as the mind of enlightenment, then if we are completely lacking in conscientiousness with regard to what that means, or what that implies in terms of our life and the practices that we should be doing. And yet we make our aspirational prayers, oh, may everything be good for me. Then that's not going to work. The Buddhas and Bodhisattvas will remain, as it were, distant in a state of equanimity and not engaging. But it's not their issue. It's our own issue. We have not lived up to our side of the bargain, as it were. And so it's kind of, this is what it's pointing out. Verses number 13 and 14 discuss this. Although for the benefit of every creature, countless Buddhas have passed by, yet I was not an object of their care because of my own mistakes. And if I continue to act like this, again and again shall I undergo suffering in unhappy realms, sickness, bondage, laceration, and the shedding of blood.
So pen chajabana michi kondro shu sa be kondro san magi wa shu ta sutone pa ke shasa mege kondro shu sa de ngaran pa middle che pen to go sabsa chen da kol che pen to go sa ko pen to sa yo mare kasana kol dewa chesa yo mare dewa chen ko nyomo shu chobo ngo do gyote de ano ko ge go lo ba jam de ro ta ga samlo shabash ta de ro ta den za 다 거의 약고 영화 쇼 거다 이제 롱다 마기바데 매 숙충아 차바 좀 몰람 잡대면 또 가야지 뭐도 왔다 뒤잡을 지래 나랑 저 왔다 진짜 신전다 심제 탐제라 편바서 산제 잠에바 대바 조자 산제 잠에바 정말 대바 조자 다니에서 랍도 냠비아서 다디 어느 가서를 다 같이 가서 다 팬도서 유 마주버다 랍도 냠비 아니 디 소소가 다 디다 제도와 디 가서 펜버투서 유도 소소 소마도와 인자 냠베 란지 예베 산제 대다가 소유주 산제 대다가 소소를 아니 야 가서 가서 규미도 도와 아니 권에 도에게 제대로 주유도 대주 땅 마도 소소 가샤 랑가 가샤라 주유도 마주도 단도야 삼로 마당한테 되는 시대 대신도 다 밤에 봐 제와이나 근데 나는 신전 던데 다가나 신전 대바 이는 너무 도수고 시원 준 대는 시간 제가 시원 준 대바 이나 제나 양다양도 다 무투네 어느 소유 주유도 매바다 산제 가제 좀바 이네 소유 주유도 팬도에 주유도 미주와 차게 됐어 대신 아니 년도 깨냈다 대제다 나는 신전 년도 깨는 다 가서도 동안 나서 받쳤다 깨나 내다 칭와다 아니 천기 강라 줘봐다 아니 루 셰바 소기에서 동해 용어 주로서 용어 주로 셰바 오죠 아까 코에그 동해 다 용주 면에 다가는 용주 여바가 용어야겠다 시차 내야 되거든 봐 주로 셰바 오죠
So this is referring to, say, an instance, for example, where we're encountering somebody who is in a great rage about some issue or other, and we try to help to be of benefit there, but we cannot be of help. In fact, we can really just throw, we like throwing oil on that particular fire and make the situation worse. Why is that the case? It's because we haven't developed that sort of connection that is in tune with all sentient beings. In other words, we haven't lived up to the idea of the vow that we have taken. So the best we can do in a situation like that is distance ourselves and offer aspirational prayer. So it's saying that we kind of like really are
말다 게 딜라이 디스고다 단다데 산제 잔주 삼바수에네 다 소소 밤에베 온게다 가서로 단 지체 대변 단다들어 게세 다니 전부 남게 아니 가서다 다녀서 제그레스 답변에 차차바이나 나라도 티디발 동바서로지 아니 메미 콘도 사보 롱 사보 딱리 잡되게 답에 콘도 샤원 줘대바이나 다 소소 아제 들지 팬토고 삼사 제바이나 팬토서 문두가 다 팬토도 말에 거 가서 디카도 되지잖아 콜 롱라는 가리네 제스기로 콜 팬토에 문도 다 가서 콘도 마시네 control da nyomoda shukchungda trebekala ani koya geje shena shesashtuwa hol pen to to da di kabla nyomo shukchungbo shawande jotedo hol pen to sa yomare 다 가르쳐도 그래서 다 몰음 자야면 가야지 하면 다 다들 이제 산제다 자주 써봐서 가라서 아니 밤에 받친 대바이나 바유 마데네 대바이는 딱 하나 좀 몰음 자야 소라시면도 지난 것도 펜 토토에 누가 열 때 이내 하나도 펜 토토에 누가든 가라서 배주면 받자로 가라서 밤에 오기 다 어다 뒤도 소리지
So it's like this, that so the neighbor is extremely angry, constantly arguing and shouting and so on next door. And again, I saying the issue there of trying to be of help at that point is almost impossible. That there's nothing one can do there. That one must wait until they calm down and maybe then go next door and have a quiet talk with them. About the only thing that one can do. Prior to that, one can simply just offer aspirational prayers that things may calm down and so on and so on. Again, is likening this to the way the Buddhas are relating to us when we are lacking conscientiousness with regard to our behavior, our practice, our keeping of vows, and so on. And that from the Buddha's point of view, they can't see any benefit in helping us at that point. It's like we are the ones out of control, angry, and so on, but just lacking any conscientiousness. And so they can only, from their point, offer prayers that we may kind of get our act together and start living up to the vows that we have taken. And then when we are able to do so, then the Buddhists have opened up that kind of route of communication to be able to help us at that point. And so this is the kind of way that it's being talked about. So here, so that these verses talking about that the Buddhas who have been working to benefit all sentient beings over many eons, so many have already passed, but that both my practices and my vows have degenerated. I've accrued many faults or mistakes, as they mentioned in the verse, and so therefore I haven't been an object of care of these Buddhas, so due to my own fault. But now, if I continue in this way, continue like with this lack of conscientiousness, still kind of paying homage to my own self-cherishing, then I will end up in the lower realms again. Therefore, open myself to a sickness, a disease, bondage, being lacerated by weapons, having my arms and legs cut off, etc., etc. And so this suffering will have to be experienced if this is my attitude.
상계의 자주 선바 속에 아니 코나 속에 다 저게 가서데 가서 겨왕아 제단 렌데다 된데게 내주 다 편바슴제 탐제를 두에 두도 열다 다 늦을 편바 갑도데 두투에면 도와 다 된데게 코랑게 다 저게 삼로 가서다 저게 뭔가 말이 betele 뉴도 타와 쇼스타 몰음 자에 아니 뭐와 제대 만도 갑도들 편 토토에 걸으면 다 따님서 샤교를 도와 다니면서 샤교를 도와 그러와 다니면서 샤교를 도와 왔다 디나시래 다 디나시래 가라쪽에 다가 저 가서데 가서래 다 가자 지금 가제 가서래 다다데 네바 마방 받잖아 아니 밤에 받잖아 대바이나 아니 산제의 자주 선바 속에 다 캔거 열 때 다 가쪽으로 다니면서 다 닌제선 다니면서 샤야면도 탑시면 도와 그러와
So for example, we have a kind of a type of person who discards the whole notion of past and future lives, of the law of cause and effect, of liberation, of the omniscient state of enlightenment, etc., and just refer to all this as, oh, this is bloody ridiculous, blind faith, not real at all. And so, from their point of view, when they are regarded by the Buddhist bodhisattvas, they're kind of saying, you know, such a person, how can they be kind of directly benefited when they have such a, you know, hard-headed attitudes like that? And just they simply make prayer, or may the kind of the scales fall from their eyes, may they be able to attain liberation and so on. And so this is what is meant by the Buddhas and Bodhisattvas being in the state of equanimity, that they simply have this kind of make these prayers for others to be benefited, but it's clear from the side of these beings that they can't avail of that connection, of that direct benefit.
What did it? That the Castle Nebala Pameva Cheva Yinata, just what in the chat would what in the chat, what I think the Gyundigat and into Marato Mashiba Yunga in a lost subordinate, Jumsen on the jet, that Jumsen on the door, Yima, and then Namshina, and because of the more you can to shit the Lamia Yugua, share the Lamia Yugua. Because not you go to Ting Yagi, not your best, the little Chamashawache, not your best. 가서를 당가라도 탐에에 레당보아 지게 아니 하고에 되고 리미테이션으로 차유지로 와 차유지로 그 중간 통에 그 양답에게 아니 저거 네바니베 통에 말해 그 랑기 아니 저거 가서를 랑 셈게 셈모데 셈 뇨모베 셈와데 아니 덴데 저거 가자자 하고 투주지래 아니 디리 야보 통에서 선이 두자 통 줘그래 그거요 말해 그 템보요 말해 다 중생 돈에 리바 양다근데 아니 잡된 게 참아 유명의 돈에 중생 돈에 걸어도 아니 오유가 내줘도 싱그러워 아니 디 돈에 아니 지금 배나 가사시에 랑 가사시다 마가사 수이만에 켜와면 디 셰게 돈다들 중생 돈만도 따져 아니 수자래 있네 아니 가서 중생 렌투바지 아니 수그 편바 두바데 편바 탐자 렌투바 준 거와 진짜 리베 제소자 좀생게 제소장게 중앙이나 아니 강내 가요 말이야 아니 뭐 이거 내도 실 남녀도 녀도 그러와
So of course again one sees the absolute importance of being able to establish and refine reasoning with regard to how we approach all these issues. To see the actuality of the situation, and to move away from like I want, I don't want, I like, I dislike, and so on. Just kind of like taking this kind of a very beginner's attitude that you can see in itself that has a very limitations. Very big limitations in regard to how one can fulfill that sort of basic desire, and also the reasoning to back that up is a very limited reasoning. It's not a valid reasoning, and that indeed we have to concede that in so many instances of I want, I don't want, I like, I don't like, and sort of coming to conclusions based on that these conclusions are part and parcel of a mind that is under the influence of mental affliction most of the time. And so it's kind of saying we must trust to reasoning. We must trust to reasoning that is kind of unbiased and really you know, centered on benefit. And if that's the case, then we can expand those reasons, deepen those reasonings so that they kind of inform all of our useful decisions. So if we just
小概了哦，第的不是亚国的上上去了，广大这的大厂的派他的家国的程度啊，他的嘞，我那都呀都是个的，要嘛，可是中山个团呢买不起呢，俺家里拿出来的亚国拿出来亚国独家拿出来独家，真的就是钱赚的了。俺说说那我这个没几个亚国人，哦的亚国人，说那我们这个就没几个，个这的大个这个这的。这老说了，他家里呢，可是开门来接，我他感觉就告诉了，中间的三楼马达这，俺现在的说的，我三楼单的，单的告诉了，三这个出路个，他都能哪里这个做大的嘛的，现在的说嘛，刚啥了做嘛去了，刚啥的现个多大的卡多大呀的，刚啥，刚啥了嘛就去了，就是看的，可能刚啥说的，也或者独家的，刚啥说的，的中间马达是。可能写的了，多大概率下但是写的了呀，年度的长度你要的是，写的了呀，俺那年度的长度你要的，俺那长度了大家嘛的，年度的多大概率也是，年度的了呀，南写了对吧的，一写了对吧你要的是，南写了对吧的，一写了对吧的给这个的是，一写，南写了，三说的来吧了，三说的来吧个南写，可是不是。对了，对吧？当一些了，对吧？的一些了，对吧？的给这个人是，我大概这都把稀松了就吧，我对的，可是刚上中间的嘛，就把这写个多大的个了一下，写个多大的来长短的年段要的，看长短的到年段的下，年段的来呀，可是的，南些了对吧？年段是当一些了对吧？年段就一些了对吧？年段的给巧的，我当对的想，我有个那就是先头了吧。
And so, how do we establish this kind of reasoning to move away from, what is in fact such a surface level interpretation of our world? When we talk about, I live my life according to what I want, what I don't want. That sort of shallow attitude leads to all sorts of contradictions and problems that, just sort of trying to satisfy oneself in the immediate kind of sense. I want this now, I don't want this now, and so on. That it leads to making judgments based on just that, so that you may, change that the propensity for such change in one's attitude just on that sort of very, very shallow interpretation, so that what you might like in the morning you'll dislike in the evening. The person you thought was great in the morning is become your enemy in the evening. So there's no kind of reliability in that, because there's no basic reasoning backing it up or acting as a foundation for it. So that's the first thing we have to lose, to move away from such a shallow way of interpreting our life and so on, and to kind of look into something that has a lot more reasoning into it. And one way of refining our reasoning is to go through the four kind of level process of, say, when somebody is speaking to us, do not interpret what is being said based on the person themselves. Just put that aside, but concentrate on what they actually say, and then you look into what they say and differentiate between what is definitive and what is interpretative with regard to what they say, and to follow what is definitive. But also to look into that definitive element of what they say, and to see what is said based on a sensory understanding versus a mental understanding, and to go with the mental understanding. And so here's one process by which we can really start to improve our own reasoning capacity.
我的是的，他感觉这个说的中餐的特别多呢，俺那各把一年历史连多中国了，肯定一年历史连多了去， 肯定呢lecture连对，肯定呢这个原点通途也全部了。那你们把这中间都讲了，那说干嘛干当，那个就我有那是新的嘛的，个中间都真的，个干嘛干给这干嘛，个中间都我有那是第一把的，我这个多，这个用不多。那第一张靠这个他接的我来了我，按马诺哇马出吧，给的敌人他这个老板呢，生意。所说的日本个女把宿舍的真的，按敌人给的热当多的啊，他上的人拿下这么多，可是中间日本个敌人女把就敌人的热下是，按呢看就告诉我有个那时按呢，刚才呢打不掉多中国多，按我有的没就把的来那不可能 release 接多多，听见看来打不就中国么多，可是说日本接受整个有这敌人日本人女把不过要了，把热当然嘛。
So that this process of really accepting the reasoning capacity in relation to how we make decisions in life, it's very important that we try to do this, to see the qualities within the process of reasoning itself. That through reasoning we can reach the best conclusion. And through reasoning we can see the good of what needs to be done. And to move away, don't talk about like, oh, because I like or dislike. This is not part of the reasoning process. And so we have to aim for actuality. And if we can, we're good at that, we will be more decisive. We will be unmistaken with regard to our decisions. We will always decide what is most beneficial. And so that's, and also we become more honest with regard to our mistakes. So we can go, oh yeah, yesterday I could see my mistake. I see my mistake because I deviated from the actuality of the situation. I didn't use the valid reasoning. I can correct that. And by doing so as well, one has not just the asset of reasoning, but one has then the extra benefit of really when one sees the unreasonableness of our previous actions, to genuinely let them go, to kind of say, okay, that is now edited out of my thinking, that process, so I can move on, already improved because of being able to apply valid reasoning.
大家呢，就是那我那阵呢，这个说他们这前边啷个了，你也得做多，他们这前边那个。你的，这么呢 ignorance 养着 ignorance 干啥啥的成的，可说的，说个这个这点结巴没把的，说咖喱那玩意大家啦，这个点把子呢，做把人呢，俺那个说，可说的，木头的夸呢去 ignorance 啥的去，马些嘛忙啥的去，但就中间个团呢，因为这里边结巴真做的，那个，个现在的怕塞觉得，啊呢，就他们这塞话的，他们这开不了，他们这开不上了，làm捏的做起来的话。
So we must see it in that sense as well, that this is not just a casual option that we can choose. That reasoning is there as an option, but rather we should see it as our whole way of being, and that also the more we are able to deal with our faults through reasoning, the closer we get to the omniscient state of enlightenment. This is something we should bear in mind. We should bear in mind also, of course, that the opposite is also true, and that if we are not applying reasoning in order to edit out our faults, we are simply adding to our ignorance. We are acceding to everything in the way it appears and just accepting things like that. That's just accumulating ignorance, more and more ignorance in psychic existence. And so we can see that logically, if we are, if we accept reasoned analysis to come to valid reasoning with regard to whatever is occurring in our lives, we have the capacity to eradicate more and more fault from our thinking and so on. And that, when we have gotten rid of all our faults, that equals the omniscient state of enlightenment. So this is definitely leading towards that state.
간자되게 뭐유기 내주 투바 아니 간제 쉐베 속에 아니 다 간자제 몽바데 세요 뭐요라 몽바데 세요도 아니 담지 gem발라 남게도 저거요 다들.
So also another way of looking at it is the whatever degree that we are able to cultivate with regard to seeing the actuality of a situation, also at the same time that is lessening our ignorance with regard to that same object. We are, clearing away that confusion, and by definition, that is bringing us closer to the state of enlightenment. And of course, also that we are starting then to really favor the less coarse aspects of consciousness and trying to access the more and more subtle levels of consciousness, and thereby that also facilitating our capacity to really see true reality. So we'll leave it there for today, and we will start to recite some the name mantras of Shakyamuni Buddha. And so, doing this meditation, as was described before, we focus on the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha in the space in front, marked by the Hong. And we ourselves and all kind other sentient beings also similarly marked with the syllables Om at the crown, at the throat, and Hong at the heart center. And so we effect the descending nectar light meditation as we recite the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha. And then just by trying to maintain single-pointed focus on the figure of Shakyamuni in the space in front, and then recalling the good qualities of the Buddha's body, speech, and mind, and enlightened activities, etc. And then reaffirming our desire to really understand that there's no choice but to really attain a state of enlightenment in order to benefit all sentient beings. And to kind of support that motivation, I'm going to recite these name mantras of Shakyamuni Buddha.
Daya da o muni muni ma muni so Daya da o 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 muni ma muni so Daya ta 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 o muni ma muni so
Ayatao
Nipune
Muni
Mani
Muni
Swaha Dayatao
Ayatao
Nipune
Muni
Mani Swaha Tanda Tombeke Chivo de la Yigu Omtel, Yigu Omtagara, la mine, Tombet Sanga Batter, in Omtele, and Ompado Baba Trene, and Randa Rangatama, Sinjatanja Chivo Omlama, Shune. Omla Shune, and Kasataka Shune, and it Kasa de Vesetro the Rangil, and it Chibone, Ma Vesetro, and Randa Tago de Magasim Tan Chega, and it Socho, Majambala, Misawa Chovalas, Luke, when that's having said down Sangama, command members of Tiban, Nani, Ma Duenches or something of Bashet. What they call it, Dieta Monument Sanashua.
And so then as we continue the recitation of the name mantra, we focus on the Om syllable at the crown of the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, which begins to emanate countless Om syllables themselves on the rays of light, and they enter into our crown at the syllable on our crown, and indeed similarly to all sentient beings all around us. And we see how these can purify all the negativities associated with the body. This is killing, stealing, sexual misconduct, of all the particular negativities like that we have accumulated, not just in this life, but in the previous life, in the previous life to that, all the way back to the beginning of this time and all the countless rebirths we have had.
What the Kobashima, Dungeon, but none, Dungeons of Masters, and the Taganisha Rangi, that the Savata, and Maubala Taka Sani, and Bajash, that Sani, and Rangas, Simgita, the Bajasha, but none, my Dungeons of Masters, and then Tembe Atilamine, Title Monimus, and the Tembe Atila, a part of Baba Turner, around the Rangat Hard was Sinja Tanjaka, and Tembe Alama, Timima Shune. And Rangi Nagona Sabeta, Tamatsu, Najala, Settle, Singama, Toma, members of the word, Nani, my Durchin, and the Rangi Namshake them the top, Baja Shasha condition, but Nani, Durches of Masters of Comasha.
Likewise, that we feel that this purifying Oms and the nectar light that accompanies it has the power to completely purify all such physical negativities that we have accrued, as well as the imprints of those negativities. They're completely and utterly gone and purified. And then we can focus on the red A syllable at the throat, and that emanates again countless A's with the nectar light accompanying it, entering into our A at the throat, and similarly at the throat of all the sentient beings all around us. And this time focusing on all the purification of all the verbal negativities, lying and harsh speech and divisive speech and idle gossip, etc., such that it is extremely effective at purifying all the negativities of all the lives that we have accrued, as well as the imprints of those negativities as well. They're completely and utterly purified.
What is what? And the other thing, I need to get Hola, meaning, and to get Honle, and Honle, we set part to go Honle, we set part of Baba, part of Baba, to the other Sibjatam Jagger, to go Hondela, Ninga Hondela part, Timne, and the Kaja because we said train it, Takaja, Toma Meba, the Kabatu, and the Jigger, Kaso, Takaja, Nax and Nursing Lokala Sobeta, Yi, when never Kalija Sayavina, that is Sabati, and similar to the Pacha, that gave the and the call of Kodig and the Pacha. That Ludele, Baja condition, but none don't choose something, but none in my dirgin. But the Tata Ranga because of the Taka Luke or the Nag or the Eagles of never typical, but none dirgin at that Rangi Bobby Bugas on the part, none my dirgin, but damn how to watch it. My dirges was something what in the commercial to the Ranga doing the about Satos kitchen. Take it, think, Boxer mobile thing de la Rangi Chita, and Katani. 카탄데 아니 디 카나도 디 뭐만 매고 봤사니 뭐만 매고 봤 세제 세니 다 간자 지금 가서데 세수 삼서 어디게 삼로다
So then we focus on the Hong syllable at the heart center of the figure of Shakyamuni Buddha, emanating these countless rays of light, as well as countless Hong syllables, entering into our heart center and the heart centers of all kind mother sentient beings, ostensibly purifying all negativities accumulated through the mental sense with covetousness, malicious intent, and wrong view, etc. And that they are completely and utterly purified together with all the imprints of those minds. Then all the three syllables together continue the process of purification of all negativities of body, speech, and mind, as well as all the imprints of those negativities. And we feel that they are completely eradicated from the body. They can't remain within the body-mind continuum. And they are kind of like leaving the lower part of our body through an open crack in the ground below, through which the open mouth of the Lord of Death is awaiting to receive all of this negativity. It's sort of in a sense of never, it's never satisfied. It can't be satisfied with all the negativity that is being fed into that mouth from within us, so that everything has to leave our body mind to reach that point of satisfaction.
rangi jiwo zhamba tuka hong sunga la pa debe jiwo zhamba tuka sunga la ming ne ane debe tsanga sa le sunga la wesa pa do meba dunyam to chowa la tena ane rangi ta lu nga yisum de sabe tikpa de tikpa ta ne ja soda ga to ba da ko chaju semba la ba da ko sanga ge tamchi da ko la sube nyaba kale sa yo la ate ba na ni ba cha de chaba nga ba te ma do ba chen pa 소소가 다 그다 루기 밥이 부가서래 봐 나니니 바 가서래 다 가자 바다 상지 따가지 마 대쳐서 때는 뭐 그지 아니 지자 신제 칸을 저 차상마지 바 세네 아니 지다 마 차상 다네 다 바자다 잡아 봐 다저도 아니 지다 신제 아니 가다에 매바자 가봐 좀 촌 가다에 매바 차상사체 아니 랑게 디바 바자도 잡아 그 장시 다바 중소 랑 전제的다지 머리 배셔 바자도 잡아 바자 아니 내가 도지 야좀 지게 바 지다 신제 칼라 인제 스퀘전 아니 배 카드 뒤 남야 다음에 봐 차소서 아니 바 사마 딕소 삼사 원들에는 배 디디 바자도 잡아 장소 선서 원들에 고마시.
And then likewise to again talk about the three levels or three types of negativities being purified at the same time through the Hong nectar light. They are completely removed from our bodies. All these negativities that they cannot remain in our bodies, and so that all the vows that we have contravened, be it the Pratimaksha vows or the Bodhisattva vows or the Tantric vows, any downfalls, any faults, any infractions of those vows, they have been purified along with the imprints of those vows. All of this is leaving through the lower parts of our bodies, all the attitudes that we have promoted through self-cherishing, self-grasping, etc., as well as all the imprints of those bodies leaving in the form of black dust and black coal, water, etc., into the jaws of the Lord of Death until it's completely satisfied, completely full, and that we feel we are completely emptied of all of these faults, all of these negativities, as well as their imprints. And then the mouth closes over, the jaws close and are sealed by a double dorje at that point. And the ground that opened up is also comes back and is sealed over once again.
我야고 시고 저저 되게 바차다 저 바다네 야고 시고 저 때문에 구소도 진라 말려봐 종수 섬서 가와고 다 지금 어디를 저다 간제 저 가서데 저 가서데 그래 다 간제 저 가보다 다 탐직 점에 두발에 개견세 튕견 좁다 야고 시고 종수다 산제 고마도 보다 라마 투비하고 제수 송수 손을 가와고.
And so we can really rejoice at such an effective practice. You know, this is really dealt with my negativities and obscurations here extremely effectively. How wonderful that is. The obstacles to my practice, the obstacles to my attaining the state of enlightenment, the omniscient state of enlightenment, have been eradicated as well. How good, how wonderful this is. I rejoice.
我真的是，感觉这个对军都真的是我们什么当个呢？俺车主不一样，他感觉超啥就这样用过的，俺说是这个车主不给，俺旅店车不得了，平个的数不多，我等的恐怕些些，
So of course, this continuing of this kind of practice is extremely effective, not just for the purification element as being emphasized here, but also said to be very auspicious for a long and healthy life.
我真的是，俺他让给去我了，他别嘛的你嘛的单位点起，他给就叫这样的呗，可是到我讲，俺这个俺别嘛你们单位点就恐怕些，俺办的这位老板人不就大概就我变得跟着股市推荐我就说的这当别告诉别，你别告诉，说点就三节恐怕嘛多，我的接送说的恐怕些。
And next, we established the lotus sun and moon disk mandala seat on our own crown, and issue the invocation verse thrice. O glorious and precious root guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here on my crown. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. At the end of the first recitation, the figure begins the journey. At the end of the second, arriving. At the end of the third, they remain on our crown until we attain enlightenment.
我当时就跟我们就说是我这是搞过，但是查找我选择我当时跟这亚拉多面对的这么比，你这我这讲谁不就我这讲，但是他让给就我别嘛让给人家了，人家别嘛特别起来就说上这讲，但是你把他单位点就恐怕小，他这个呢。我这里讲，俺这里办的这个，那么不是，但是人家别没得，跟着不出对就我就这顺便讲的，他没告诉别，你没告诉说，是不是带出去了三件工嘛，都我接说是个，这俺这里你别嘛大家的嘛，人家看中了，那就你来当你先吃的，这个到这个我这个嘛就看见吃，俺这里第他过多，俺对别整个带动我们是带动我们带动我们嘛是带动我们是，但是其实讲咩样个，俺送啊，我马上把这那滴一个送过这个吃，但是。对不对？那他的点我也他妈也都那小马来说，这个查书过这个去，我这里去过不些。
At this point, then, we really rejoice in what has just occurred. We can offer the 7-limb practices as well as a mandala practice, and again, supplicate the Buddha to really look after us until we attain the state of enlightenment. And then we establish a similar lotus sun and moon disk mandala seat at our own heart center, and invite the Buddha, the Guru Buddha, down to take part to sit at our heart. O glorious and precious root Guru, come take your lotus and moon seat placed here at my heart. Keep me safe in your kindness. Bestow on me the attainments of body, speech, and mind. Again, at the end of the first recitation, the figure moves down through the central channel, and at the end of the second, arrives at our prepared seat. At the end of the third, is set to remain there until we attain the state of enlightenment. At this point, then, the petals of the lotus of the mandala seat fold over and are sealed by a 5-pronged white semi-vajra at the tips, and that the package of the lotus leaves is surrounded by 3 mantras. The first mantra in a clockwise direction being the name mantra of Shakyamuni Buddha, and the second mantra in an anti-clockwise direction being the mantra of wisdom of Manjushri, and the third mantra again in a clockwise direction being the mantra of dependent origination.
广大，那么就这么多。广大，俺大的这个让给那个约束，大概在那么图标我。 lama tuya ongpati anu kusung tole wese padu pebre rangi chiwane kandiga pala wese chobala tene ani chigo thomma mebanta digwa chabadoya ani kita chigo kasore ta chigo damjune shichen ta ka chigo sotale tombata kawa chanju sime lamata kawa sanga tamsita kawa 라소메 딱까지 녀바 컨디션에 다 제가 간남다 라시 간남 녀바 컨디션에 바 장시 다바 좀서 선자 다가네 시게 아니 루게 나자 셈게 동에 아니 주시 코 많이 와 자로 틀리 게 딱한제 가리 임바이네 딱한제 견자 컨디 줘바이네 다가네 시게 저거 소소게 딱까지 저 가소데 저거 가소데 딱한제 저거 가소데 딱까지 갱에 람도 켜발라 봐도 주제게 뒷바데 뒷바 가리 임바이네 다가제 상해 근데 중간에 최도 규례게 아니 개 근데 뭐 세네 튼게 다 개개한테 튼게를 창화다 야고 시우 중수 어디로 고마시
And of course, as a result, then from the Buddha within the lotus petals, countless rays of light begin to emanate, permeating throughout all our body, through from the crown of the head, through the soles of the feet, every atom, affecting a very, very powerful purification of all the negativities that we've accumulated since the beginning of time. As we have previously stated, those related to contravening the 10 virtuous attitudes, of practicing ethics of avoiding the 10 non-virtues, of any infractions of the vows of the Pratimoksha, the Bodhisattva, or the tantric vows where we have contravened the samayas with our guru, etc. All of the naturally occurring faults and anything prescribed by the Buddha that we have contravened, and indeed any fault that we have accumulated, any negativity leading to sickness in the body or mental unhappiness, that any fault or error that we have accumulated, that it's completely purified, that all of the inconducive conditions that we perceive to interfere with our practice, we now can perceive as actually conducive conditions, to see everything as being something assisting our spiritual development. And indeed, the biggest problem that we have to quickly attaining the state of enlightenment, that seeing everything in ordinary appearance is transformed into seeing everything with pure appearance.
다 타메기나지 교탐제다. 근데 다 다기 소소 신도 저 루는 일랭게 라마샤자스는 꾸딜해지 지게지 소소르디 라마샤자스는 꿀을 주수 삼사자. 소소 신도 저 셈데니 라마샤자스가 투들해지 소소 셈데 라마샤자스가 투를 주수 서자. 온다 람게 룽아 예수가 라마샤자스가 구소도 뭐 임베 주수 삼사자. 아니 디 대화테 대화티 녜벨로티 동배 대화데 대통령님이 시켜서 सब스탄 다다 문에다 개요 말이 다다 다른 거 레던 걸 이네요 뭐가 이제서 문에 코나 계속 삼사 어디데 삼로다 아니 소소 대사가 내대 내가 교 탐제 제네 딱 이제 도바샤자 도게 아니 가서 답이신도 줘서 삼사자 랑 도바샤자 도베 구수도 뭐 예매 교와데 대다 냠도 동반이 삼로다 동반이서 꾸꾸와데 나라 랑심에 봐 삼로다네 안디 두갈래 아니 덤베고 빠도 심제가 장단냐 뭐 뜨네 아니 감성의 심제 탐절로 포할라 때네 대다단제 도바샤자스 라마샤자스게도 뭐 예매 줘서 삼사자 안 대다가 내 대다단제는 여기 견 탐제 제네 라마샤자스게 답이신도 줘서 삼사자 다 심제 탐제도 산제 고마 두비 심제 단제 산제 살아 거기서 니마 데린 거 도서 다 야뭐 중수 손을 가고
And then through the combination of my own more subtle wind acting as the primary cause, together with the body of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own body is transformed into the enlightened body of a Buddha. And then through the combination of my own more subtle mind acting as the substantial cause, together with the mind of the Buddha acting as the cooperative conditions, my own mind is transformed into the enlightened mind of a Buddha. Now I can see how my own body, speech, and mind become inseparable from the body, speech, in mind of a Buddha. And this brings forth a sense of bliss which combines with voidness, and I abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. I understand this is all happening for me at the level of my own aspiration and imagination now, and that the place I am in also is transformed from its mundane status into the celestial abode of an enlightened being. And then I contemplate on emptiness, on seeing how phenomena have no business at all existing in the way that they appear, and that they are merely imputed by thought. And from this, I see myself as emanating as a Buddha, as an enlightened being, from my heart center, rays of light equal in number to all the sentient beings in the 6 realms of existence, touching them, they're transforming spontaneously into the enlightened beings, and their place also transforming into the celestial abode of an enlightened being. At this point, I completely rejoice at not only attaining that state of enlightenment, but also fulfilling the welfare of all sentient beings. Today is the day this has occurred. Again, I totally rejoice.
That's the Jatan Sanjay Salah Goba. Each of the Jawakar to Susu, the Chavakanga, you did about to Pata Zabre, did the one that the Tetonjis may she just some such. I don't know why you get somebody that the Wunia Kurata de Guega, Gula show so much.
And of course, then is the state of enlightenment itself, the virtue that has led there, myself as the agent of that virtue, completely lacking any objective existence and merely imputed by thought. And that brings forth a sense of bliss, which combines with voidness, and again abide in the wisdom of non-dual bliss and voidness. And again, I know that I'm operating at the level of imagination here, just bringing this to appear, but I know it's not so easy, yet I dedicate sincerely so that it may be manifest for real as quickly as possible. You are Avalokiteshvara, great treasure of compassion, not aimed at true existence, and Manjushri, master of flawless wisdom, as well as Vajrapani, destroyer of all the demons without exception, Tsongkhapa, crown jewel of the sages of the land of snows, Losang Drakpa, at your feet I make requests. So again, a tree what chick jung song.
Yeah.
The two so you're not gonna the the Gurya Oscar for door about so Denjung on Dendrel Tone. Denjung the Tang and a Chojung the Yuna then Denjung the also the Koro Korye get chick the Yingorava young men are the because Tok Mango ki Kecho Mango ki chick re Marawa ane tin yang tu di tang denjung tang yin lak ju ni tang drela kandra shagor is
that denjung se de
inge tone again so there's a question that has arisen. The question is, if dependent arising is a rising phenomena, shouldn't it be circular, multi-dimensional? And in what way is this linked to the 12 links of dependent origination?
rangi chashela tena karsana ko yudene majuba yinza ani ko yoba de tene jungsa mendo da josa shimba yo marwa ante dende yimba yinza ko da tene jungsa da kaso de da ngobu ge chaji게 de yimba inane ani ko jude da kaso de juda debut ge ani nedala tene yongchogre 아니 전에 다 가서 다 시주 제 건가를 자고도 가서 땡주스도 뭐부 이메가 딱 봐리 간대냐 다 다미다니가 그때 이번에 딱 근데 좀 봐이나 딱 가서 차실할 때는 두 번 인되겠지 차실 마사나 아니 유디 마사들 차실할 때는 두 번 되겠지 어디 차지 다 가서 콜로코스도 그랬어 그래 다 콜로코스도 다 가서 간제 시간대 좀 봐이네 디 두발라 아니 디 가서 다 가자 저가서 랑갸와 매딩이지 랑갸와 매딩이지 다 가자 코란라 디 두비엘라 아니 저게 차셰 다그 차셰 디게디 양자 차상 좀발라 때네 아니 시디 요되게지 차셰데 마사나 시디 매딩이지 다 때데 양라주 다 다가래 와 때데 양라 중니 그때다 먼저 코아코다는 시가 열봐 로 빼는 거죠. 빼나 때에 야라 중에 나네 아니 치와 쓰게데 타마데래. 당 거죠. 야라 가서 치와 쓰게데 다 야라 중에 나네 타마데래. 치와데 다 야라 중에 나네 야라 지금 저도 타마데 치와데 용해라 아니 거기 가서데 다 가서데 다 깨와데 용고도 와 깨와데 용할라 아니 가서도 다 가자마 깨와도 매와나 아니 가와다 나와다 치와도 그래 용화에 매 뒤용화에 깨와도 용구도 와 다 깨와도 용화라 배나 세다리 소리자 세다리 치와도 용화라 세다리 깨와도 용화 세다리 깨와도 용화라 아니 덴데 깨게 와서라 누바테겐 게 세바 레바 시바솜 깨왕가마게 달라 용구 세디 대마타게 깨왕가마게 달라 덴데 시바다 레바 시바솜데 깨와티 레게 누바테겐 들어 누바테겐 딜라 누바테사 주거와 티가스나 덴데게 레들라 샤거와 남세도 바자 샤죠들라 아니 덴데게 레데 가리를 때는 용거랬으나 아니 가서다 덴데 레데 아니 녀모 도숨라 때는 용거도 와 다 도숨데 가발레 용거랬으나 아니 단지 마릭 바서다 마릭 바서 단지 마릭 바된다 단지 마릭 배 오게 레사 티 남세게 된도 바자샤 바텔라 때네 아니 레 가바케게나 세바 레바 세바 숨 쓰였다 아니 딜라 때네 깨왈레 깨와 딜라 때네 가와다 나와다 치왈 쏘다 덴데 타마데 뚝뚝도 와 다 디가 때네 중화서 다가나 하래 다 뒤에 찍고 지잖아 다 데 코아방에 셈쟁게 대도 뇨에 간가 과다 랑게 아니 제 레상네게 온게 아니 대도 나 초바 용해지 디 용해 돼야 시대 단지 마릭 받는 된 용되고 또 왔다 된데 양라 중리게 샤바이나 어때듯이 다 디레 타고라 다 디게 타고고 있나 아니 데 로와다 치와 되게 되고 뭐는 치와 용해게 주 태거게 조디 깨와디 차 깨와 용해게 태거게 조디 세발 레바 세발 쇠따바 되게 태가로 남체도 바자 샤바 차거 바자 샤바도 태가 레사바도 독숨데 단지 마리바 차도 다 단지 마리베 냠보 때는 단지 마리바 마가 봐도 기 못는 용되기도 와
So dependent arising or dependent origination refers to the fact that all phenomena lack any objective existence. They arise in dependence on parts, independence on causes and conditions. These particular two reasonings take into account impermanent phenomena and the fact that they must all arise in dependence upon causes and conditions, and all permanent phenomena are covered by a dependent origination which it insists that all phenomena arise in dependence upon parts. And so it really covers all phenomena in that sense. This is the kind of like objective of the meditation. You see how dependent arising or dependent origination fits into a reality which lacks any objective or independent existence, is to see it as only able to exist in that way, only able to exist as a dependent origination. And that's and so this is the kind of like the circular nature of the reasoning, because it establishes that on the one hand there can be no independent autonomous way of existing, that there's kind of no basis for existence unless it is existence arising in dependence. So dependent arising or dependent origination. So that can be like, for example, in terms of parts and so on, as we pointed out. And then explaining that in the context of the 12 links of dependent origination, the 12 links end with the aging and death. And so the aging and death then going backwards, arising from becoming or birth. And so birth is precipitated by the craving, grasping, and existence, previous links of those 12 links. And that in turn, then the craving and grasping are precipitated by karmas that are laid down and motivated by the three poisonous minds, which at their heart go back to the ignorance of grasping at the existence of a self-entity. And so this is really at the heart of the 12 links as well. And so that this motivation, motivated by this grasping at the existence of the true existence of a self-entity, gives rise to karmas, which laid on imprints on the mind, which again awaken this craving, grasping, and existence to produce again another rebirth. And so we go on into that becoming, into old age and death again. And this is the circular, revolving nature of the 12 links as well. And so it becomes like that, the in-cyclic existence, revolving around, collecting this karma, and on the basis of it being motivated by this self-grasping and so on. It means that we're constantly caught into that situation. And the 12 links of dependent origination demonstrate how we are caught like this in this round of everything based on that root cause of self-grasping. So that here then we must be able to recognize or to attain liberation, to get beyond the revolutionary kind of revolving nature of the 12 links. We must be able to see the cause, to recognize clearly the cause of this self-grasping, and to be able to lay down a path of wisdom to counteract that completely, to uproot it.
아니 지금 때내 중화에서도 그 뭐유가 내다는데 근데 때내 중화에서 다 때내 중화에서도 가르스 거서 그 랑완도 좀 요마레 숭되게 요마다 때내 중화에서도 거주도 가르고서 그 랑완도 좀 요마레스 다그 랑완의 마주브레서 가서 그 매바스고 말해 랑완의 마주브레서도 다그 때내 중화에서도 조사 요마레스 저라 ten rawang matu bate ten chunga koto ten chunga de rawang matu ba koto ga choro koto ga ko ya ta tere.
So dependent arising or dependent origination refers to the fact refers to the actual status of all phenomena. All phenomena arise in dependence on something. This is the actual status. And so it also implies, in saying that, it implies also that phenomena cannot be self-powered. They cannot arise independently, objectively. So this also counteracts the extreme of phenomena, therefore, being non-existent. They are not non-existent, they are existent, but the way they exist is that they arise in dependence. They are dependently arising. And so this is the way phenomena have to be. This is the way phenomena exist, and there is no second option. That's all again. That's all again.
Thank you.
Thank you.
Everyone.
Okay.
And everyone take care.
Take care.